The mechanics.
Good. We're live. Uh, Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, viewers from wherever you're listening in from. First of all, we wish to extend our apologies for the delays due to some technical glitches that we beyond our control. However, we're happy to be here with you. You're welcome to today's panel broadcast brought to you under the auspices of the Uganda Diaspora EU Broadcasting Service. You can tune in on our YouTube channel or on JB Mwonge or Olujulido TV Facebook channels. Uh, Today is the 9th of June 2024. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our fourth episode in our human rights violation series that we've been running for the past 2 months now. And ladies and gentlemen, this is part of the discourse or the conversation that seeks to engage the EU, in particular the EU institutions, for example, the EU Council, the EU Commission, and the EU Parliament, but above all, the EU citizenry. We know that this conversation is very important. Um, this, this conversation is very, very important. That is why we continue to engage so that the people of the citizens within the EU know um, where their money is going. As we know, EU is one of the important development partners, and they give Uganda a lot of money. So we want the citizens to know where their money is going, what it is being spent on. Um, that is really where we draw the line. This money is being used, first of all, to legitimize the illegitimate regime uh, under dictator Museveni. Secondly, this money helps to oppress and to oppress Ugandans and to perpetuate the suffering that our countrymen are going through. And thirdly, it undermines our efforts to liberate ourselves. That is why it is very important to continue to engage uh, members and institutions and members of and citizens of the EU. Ladies and gentlemen, press freedom is very, very important. It is an essential pillar of democracy and human rights as enshrined in our Constitution, Article 29, that guarantees freedoms of expression, uh, but also freedoms to access information, as well as freedoms to disseminate information. It's also guaranteed under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, as well as the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. So we have a right to receive information, but we also have a right to disseminate information, ladies and gentlemen. That is why any attempts by the government or by the regime to curtail these freedoms must be condemned. As we speak, there is an upsurge in the attack. First of all, on the journalists, on the social media activists, uh, and the other netizens who feel they have a duty, first of all, to hold powers that be accountable, but also speak truth to the powers that be. Freedom is a cornerstone of democracy, and any attack on bearers of press freedom is an attack on the institutions of democracy. So, abducting bloggers is a gross human rights violations, and it undermines the rule of law. Um, Press freedom also plays a role of a watchdog. In other words, they hold government or the regime accountable. We continually expose corruption, abuse of rights, and bad governance, and that is a duty that we continue to do independently. So when they curtail, when the regime curtails bearers of this very important institution, then there is a risk of the regime either becoming a dictatorship or rights or people's rights being violated without redress. Freedom, press freedom also accords us citizens a chance to be informed, first of all, about what is happening, but they're also able to articulate issues, which leads, which makes them to be active participants in the democratic processes. So stopping or clamping on these freedoms is completely unacceptable. Um, Back home, ladies and gentlemen, we know that according to the Reporters Without Borders reports, there's been an increase on the number of arrests, abductions, even killings of some bloggers or social media activists. This includes Isma Olaxis, who was gunned down. We can name Comrade Masaba, who was abducted and is still inside. We can name Comrade Batoke, who is Bossa Lutalo, who is also uh, arrested, but I think released. We have another comrade, PTA, not to mention those who have fled the country. This attack on press freedom is very serious. It has serious ramifications. First of all, the people cannot practice their profession freely. They have to flee the country. What this causes is, first of all, it causes a brain drain. It causes disruption in families. But above all, these income earners or breadwinners for some of the families. So that has to be stopped. Today, as we speak, there are about 301 radio stations and about 30 TV channels. But this just gives you a semblance of press freedom. The regime has a very tight control in terms of content, in terms of information flow, in terms of what has to be consumed. Therefore, people are not free, and this is what we are condemning. Um, Ladies and gentlemen, the situation has been further aggravated by the emergence of Kainerugaba Muhoozi, who is the son of dictator Museveni. Um, he is a political and military actor, and he absolutely has tweeted many times that he will not hesitate to abduct, to torture, and even kill journalists. So the environment is very concerning, and that is why we call upon the international community to take note and sanction the regime. According to according to the World Press Freedom Index 2024, Uganda is ranked number 128 of the 180 countries. This shows that we are not doing very well. So, in other words, the situation, the environment for journalists is not good. The environment for bloggers is not good. And that is why we're here to discuss a number of issues, which will touch on how this has impacted democracy, what needs to be done to protect the bloggers and other social media activists. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce our panelists at this time. Please, I'm starting with Comrade Rebecca Nava. Please introduce yourself. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joe, for the opportunity. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you tuned in. I'm called Nava Rebecca, and I'm the chairperson of the National Unity Platform in Netherlands and Belgium. And it's really a pleasure, and I'm so humbled to be part of this panel to discuss a very concerning issue about the crackdown of social media, but also as the media at large. Please stay tuned because we shall be discussing several issues around this topic. Thank you. Back to you, Joe.
Thank you, comrade. Yes, over to you, comrade. Robert Kittens, please introduce yourself. Thank you.
Yes, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, our viewers, wherever you are. The name's Robert Kitunzi. I'm based out of Stockholm. I'm the EU chairperson, and I'm delighted to be with you tonight. And we're excited to have an interesting and fruitful conversation with you guys regarding the increased abuse of press, freedom of press, and the clampdown on NUP social media activists, call them bloggers, if it's the right word, which probably is not. Yes, so we're excited to be with you, and thanks for tuning in, and looking forward to your submissions. Thanks.
Thank you, comrade. Yes, viewers, I wish to remind you that the purpose of this conversation is also to engage the public. So after the panel discussion, please, we shall allow you to call in and to pose your questions or to give us your insights about this topic. Yes, of course, the topic is the crucial role of press media in preserving democracy. Why dictator Museveni must free all the abducted bloggers. Yeah, a very interesting topic and very timely also, and quite pertinent. As mentioned, the trend across the globe, is such that journalists or bloggers are coming in harm's way, whether we're talking about Gaza, whether we are talking about Sudan, whether we are talking about the RSC. This is the trend, sadly. And of course, back home, the situation is not getting any better. Uh, this is what we want to delve into and look at what could be done. Um, so without further ado, I'll begin with our first question, and that goes to Comrade Rebecca Nava. In what ways does the suppression of press freedom undermine democratic principles and processes in Uganda? How does the abduction of bloggers and journalists affect public trust in the government and democratic institutions? Over to you, comrade.
Thank you so much, Joe, for that question. First of all, it's a human right for people to have access to information internationally, but also specifically also in Uganda, that all people deserve to know what's going on around them. However, we've seen a trend with the government or the regime that has been around for over almost 40 years, that when it came into power, we only had one station, one TV station, that was Radio Uganda, and of course, Radio Uganda TV. But then they privatized the industry, and then it brought in all these small radios and TV stations. But however, as we saw the regime trying to stay in power, to stick in power, then they started to suppress and control all the media houses. That we could, I remember growing up, there were these programs that we would hear. People would act like Ebimez, and people would just express themselves. But as years went by, and the dictator went on to have a grip on the control of Uganda, then all these things went away. A popular example is BBS and CBS, where NOP is not hosted. The president can be hosted there. Because we see on NBS, they can bring a whole panel of people, but then they are talking about an issue about NOP, but there is no person to represent a party or to give in their submissions about the issue at hand or the topic of the day. So we've seen a trend that the government has done a lot to suppress the mainstream media. So because this is a generation that's really fast forward, uh, people decided to go to social media where they can easily get news or information of everything that is going on. And then here we saw bloggers coming up. However, since the regime wants to stay in power, now they ended up also coming into the small sector that would allow Ugandans to get information. And how could they better do it other than abducting the bloggers themselves who put their lives out there to get information, to have talk shows about these issues. Going back to the question, if people need to have trust in the government or the democratic institutions, there has not been any trust in the democratic institutions. I'll give an example of the UNHCR, where the president, BobiWine or Robert Chagulanyi was, and then he was even thrown out. Because he had petitioned over 5 years ago, and they had never even looked into those issues. So we do not we don't expect the masses to have trust in such bodies, and neither in the government that has continuously suppressed the media. So abducting or suppressing the bloggers themselves, they are restricting information to get out of there. I'll give an example. If I told you get a chance to go to Uganda and get in touch with the locals there, you realize that the things that you know, the people in Uganda don't know, because Facebook is hard to access unless you have VPN. So instead, people depend on the main media streams, of which the information being put out there is censored. They decide what to put there. So we who are outside are the lucky ones who get to know of all these things that are going on. And information is really vital in a revolution or into a struggle to change power in a country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Comrade. You bring it out very, very important points. Clearly, what comes out, what is clear is the regime trying to control the narrative in terms of controlling content, in terms of controlling information flow, in terms of controlling who disseminates this information. Much as the number is impressive, 301 radios, over 30 TV stations, uh, two daily newspapers, one weekly newspaper. So it gives you a semblance of freedom of expression. But all these channels are tightly controlled, and most of the owners either are government agents or proxies of Museveni. So what we find is that they're just spewing propaganda after propaganda, and there is a lot of misinformation that comes with it, whether in terms of attacking the opposition as agents of colonialists or agents of homosexuals. We see this narrative being carried out very effectively. So this creates a crisis in terms of information. And you are very right. The people sometimes are not really aware of what is happening. But we're happy. Social media is an equalizer. It democratizes this inequality in terms of enabling anybody, what are called netizens. Anybody can broadcast information. And I think we've seen this very much when our president has been doing. This was particularly uh, particularly uh, particularly clear when our president was campaigning during the 2021 elections. Our camera served as our insurance, so that was good. And I think we continue to urge the citizens to play an active role in exposing, whether it's human rights or bribery or corruption. And I think we just saw recently what Dr. Spire and Sentongo and for staff what they did. So that is really, really good. Yes, let's go to Comrade Kitunzi. Comrade Kitunzi, this is about personal stories and the consequences. Can you share personal stories of abducted bloggers and the impact on their families and communities what are the psychological and professional consequences faced by bloggers and journalists who are targeted by the regime? Over to you, comrade. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe, for the question. Yes, where do I start? I think a lot of people need to understand that we stay into contact dialogue with people who are in the struggle, especially our social media activists. I've personally been in contact with Masara. He was pretty instrumental. Well, when it came to the EU Uganda Business Forum, it was really very instrumental. But not only that, or not only then, it's been very instrumental in sensitizing anything to do with social and economic and culture issues. Has been very at the forefront of doing that. So, and then the other gentleman is Batoke Lutalo Bossa, who was abducted recently. And I'll give you a small story about his abduction and how we came to know that he was abducted. Pretty strange. So, everyone out there, you need to understand that we just don't go from anywhere to advocate or to sensitize our public about the ongoing unfairness in the country. We really are in touch with the people on the ground, especially those who are advocating for change. So they face a lot of challenges, some of which is pretty much constant intimidation. If you are only an online based activist, they'll always send you people who are going to be creating fear, intimidating you. What gives you the right to do this? Who are you? Do you think you're going to bring about change by advocating change online? Such kind of intimidation. But they all other issues which they are pretty much faced with. For instance, those ones who are abducted, they're at the risk of being tortured when they get incarcerated. We've seen some cases whereby people are being maimed, some physical damages being melted to them. Yeah, and then there's the risk of paying the ultimate price of losing their lives. I think Joe mentioned the gentleman who is known by JJ Curie. Okay, who's not advocating for the change, but he was a social media activist. Whatever he did, whatever he spoke publicly, didn't deserve for him to lose his life the way he lost his life. So that's the pretty much the end of the game of someone advocating for his rights, which is actually stipulated in the Constitution. So these people go through a lot of challenges, imprisonment, of recent. This year it's been actually, and the reason why we're doing this is because this year, as I think it is a strategy by the government of General Museveni and his group, that they really need to attack the people who are on the social media or who are advocating change online. Why? Because we've seen Masara was recently abducted too. We have Batoke. There's PTA who was also abducted. Yeah, so we're seeing a trend of trying to stifle the voices of change, which is not a good thing. So we call upon our international partners to pretty much to call out the regime on this kind of trend. It's not good in a democratic dispensation that our country advocates for. So back to the story about the abduction of, I think, Baduke. I think I had it. He gave me a call pretty much in the morning on his way to visit Masaba. And yeah, and little did we know that it was going to be abducted. So his colleagues he works with on the channel um, called me. I think it was 5 hours later, and they suspected something was not right. Why? Because they had expected to hear from him at least within the next 2, 3 hours after his visit to the prison to, to pay a courtesy, visit to his comrades, Masaba. So yeah, and then I went out to my way to contact my counterpart, Sasamavi, to know whether is to tell him that this is what he has gone on. They had not gotten to know the news, and then in the end, after too much pressure, they pretty much acknowledged that they had him and in custody. So good news recently was released, but unfortunately for Masara, for some reason they still retain him. PTA, we've not had much with him, so we also need to call out for his release and a conditional release. So that's pretty much what is happening on those stories. Now, to add on to that, when it comes to the psychological and consequences these people fail, you find that the families are really the families are really concerned and also psychologically tortured in a sense that they are not uh, I think they've been told to not say anything. They've gone they've gone way to intimidate them to the sense that they don't like them to talk about these issues. And again, I'll give you an example with the Masaba when we were doing the first online demonstration. I had an arrangement with his brother to come and explain to the public the audio because first they abducted his brother, fine, and then his brother they forced him to lure Masara, who eventually they would. So they used his brother as a bait to abduct Masara. But when we're doing the online demonstration, we were asking him to narrate the story because we're all online. He could sit anywhere and do that. But in the very beginning, it was very positive. He wanted to tell the public how he was abducted and how they forced him or coerced him to lay a bait of Masaba, and that's what happened. But last minute, towards us going live, he bailed out, which is understandable because you never know what was said to him. I guess the family was intimidated that we don't want you to speak about this, and even if he was released himself, and still his brother is being incarcerated, and God knows what is going on, what is being done to his brother. So that's a kind of psychological torture. They not only abduct your relative, but they create fear to the sense that they don't want you to say anything. Right? So that's too much. I mean, probably you're better off being incarcerated than being on the outside, having to think about what is being or what your relative or a family member is going through. So there's a lot of psychological torture. I would think, even if as we speak, they are psychologically tortured until he's going to be released, and God knows in which state he's going to be in, because we've seen cases whereby the people have been released and they don't look the same as when they were incarcerated, to the extent of I'll give you an example. Segirinya was incarcerated for a case which everyone knows was, fished. And then look at how he looks. He doesn't look the same guy as he went on. So those are the psychological, traumatic experiences families go in. On the economic side, and trying to cater for your family's welfare, you can imagine if you're the breadwinner and then they take your man or your husband, and is incarcerated. Who's going to fend for you? Who's going to look for your family? Those are all consequences of ongoing torture and, to our citizens, our brothers and sisters. So I guess that's pretty much sums it up. But we still call upon our development partners to call out the General Museveni on all these atrocities and human rights abuse. Thanks for listening, and over to you, Joe.
Thank you very much, Comrade Robert, for that very good submission. Let me just re-echo what you've said. I think the ramifications of of these of these arrests, abductions, disappearances, even killings are found wide, and it is very sad because most of these young people are their prime in their professions, in their lives. So first of all, the economic disruption that it causes to the individuals and to their environs, whether it's families or societies. They're playing a very important role. And of course, also the brain drain that this causes. We cannot even name how many people have had to flee. Sometimes, yeah, they have to flee and hide. So this is a big, it makes a big impact. And it's the country that loses because, I mean, if we're talking about journalists, how much was invested in getting, a qualified journalist, or even other bloggers, or even other netizens. So it is very unfortunate, and it must be taken very, very seriously. It is a violation of rights, and it must be addressed. Yes, going further, ladies and gentlemen. So we're really looking at the role of the international community. What can they do? So how can the international community effectively pressure Museveni to release abducted bloggers and respect press freedom? So, what role do international organizations such as the United Nations, um, Reporters Without Borders, Amnesty International, what role can they play in advocating for press freedom in Uganda? I think let's remember that freedom of press or freedom of information is enshrined in our constitution, Article 29. People have a right people have a right to freedom, and they have a right to disseminate that freedom. And we are also protected by the we are also protected by the African. We're also protected by the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, as well as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So we have these conventions out there, and the EU, the development partners are aware. So actually, Museveni should not be getting away with murder. These conventions protect our rights. So, comrade Rebecca, if you may, please answer that question. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. I guess the message to the international community or the development partners is pretty clear, very simple. If they are the champions of democracy, if they believe in rule of law, if they believe in human rights, and if they believe that uh, it's a human right for people to have a freedom to expression or freedom to access information, then they should put their partners on they should tell their partners that if at all they want continuous partnership, then they need to also respect that. Otherwise, we've turned out to be a mockery, or it's continuously being a slap in the face. That much as we talk to them, we try to engage them, they also see these things. They have reports about them, but then they continuously have businesses with them. They continuously have investment programs with them. They continuously work with them, yet they know the evils, they know all the bad things that their partner is doing. So if at all they are champions of democracy, then they should also stand with a common Ugandan and put the message very clear that if we are to continue partnering with you, because we know that Uganda needs the development partners. They are the one financing most of the activities like the police academy, with security. So if there are several investment programs, so if they continuously want to go forward with them, then they should put these conditions. This is the respect for human rights or release of our bloggers and journalists should be one of those conditions that are preset, that for continuous cooperation, you need to respect these rights. You need to release all political prisoners. You need to release Masaba. You need to release PTA. This is what we need from you to continuously work with you together. Otherwise, we as Ugandans, we need to continuously put them on the loop to remind them, to not only reminding them, but demanding that they should respect, they should stop partnering with murderers, with an abductor, with someone who has continuously suppressed human rights.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Comrade Rebecca. Very good submission indeed. And I think let's just call out the double standards, On the one hand, you cannot pretend to uphold principles and values of democracy, all the freedoms of freedom and others, and and at the same time, you cozy up with with somebody who is violating these very rights, whether it's Museveni or Muhoozi, the two are culprits and they're very, 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 very culpable. So I think the double standards must stop, and we really want the EU to come out in an unequivocal manner, like the US has done, to call out, like the UK has done. Why is the EU still sitting on the fence and not just talking about these about press freedoms? We're talking about corruption. We're talking about human rights. Why are they not taking action? I mean, we're talking about Jan Sadek, the EU representative in Uganda. We see him causing up with the regime, and we are very uncomfortable about this. We don't know why what he doesn't say evil or bad about this regime. So really, it is time the EU impose the sanctions. They have the Magnitsky, they have all the tools, the Magnitsky sanctions. Why are they hesitating? What are they waiting for? Isn't the evidence sufficient? How many more people need to be tortured? How many more people need to be killed? Come on. I mean, the reports, credible reports are out there. So really, we want the EU I think, to review its policy and its foreign policy with the regime in Uganda. We really think it is time they did something. Yeah. So going forward, ladies and gentlemen, strategies for protection and advocacy. Robert, what practical steps can be taken by local and international NGOs to protect bloggers or any other social media activists or journalists in Uganda? How can citizens and civil society groups within Uganda safely advocate for press freedom and the release of abducted bloggers? Over to you, Comrade Robert.
Thanks, Joe, for the question. It's an interesting question because it's in two parts. We have the local NGOs of the NGOs are NGOs because operating locally, and they have an international aspect in them because the NGOs from outside. So I mean, what are they? How can they impact? How can they influence or deter this crazy phenomenon which is going on about crampdown on journalists? I think they're also in a weird situation because they're massive um, of they are the mercy of the regime of their activities in the country. So they need, in one way, to trade lightly on how they can be involved in the local politics. So they are also victims of the chaos which we find ourselves into. We've not seen. I think everyone remembers when there was a clampdown on the NGOs leading up to the 2021 election. So the only thing which we would ask of them as NGOs were of international um, um, space is pretty much to re-echo our cries to the regime that this is not acceptable, irrespective of whatever consequences that may lead, because at least they have that international aspect that at least they're doing something for the country. So I think they need to be very bold in a way of advocating and calling out the country. That I think this is not acceptable, and then we see what comes out of that. Whether it's going to expel them or cease their activities, that would be something that would be also good to see the turnout. And in terms of citizens, we all know we are here because all kinds of citizenry activism has been clamped down to the sense that our brothers and sisters on the ground can barely think of going for a peaceful demonstration or advocate for anything locally, including the journalists or the bloggers or the activists we're talking about, without probably getting imprisoned, without being shot at. If you can see the regime going for shooting at a political party which is doing these wrong activities, how about these individual people? It is that chaos we need to call out. So there's some kind of sanity we can bring back to our society. So yeah, I think there's no safer way. The only safer way would be to be online because we're living in a digital age. Luckily, some of us probably wouldn't be talking about these things if we were down there, but a few bolder ones are still talking about these things, but you can count a few of them who are still online on the ground. Most of the bloggers are probably predominantly within the diaspora, but this is something. If I would say the safest would be being digital and then getting the message out to the people out there. But on the ground, it's pretty much like signing your death certificate, or probably the best case scenario being in prison. So, yeah, we find ourselves in this conundrum of ongoing impunity from the hands of General Museveni and his group. Thanks. Over to you, Joe.
Thank you very much, comrade. I agree with you, and the condition, the environment remains very, it is precarious. However, I think the internet is still the best weapon for pushing back. People can use different names. They can use pseudonyms. You don't have to use your own name, and it's still maybe the most effective way for people to mobilize people in the country. It is quite effective, and I think it's the one that brought about the Arab Spring. So still, even in Uganda, we have a chance if people can be creative without necessarily putting themselves in harm's way. Of course, we note, the regime has the media center that is very aggressive. in spewing out propaganda and controlling all I mean narratives about different issues. We have the UCC that actually that is supposed to be independent. It's supposed to be a media watchdog, but instead it's an appendage of the NRM. I think you recall that when Dr. Spire Sentong, when they're driving this exhibition, uh, information about him and his family was being leaked to the UCC. No, the UCC was leaking information to the security agencies that put his life at risk. So this is really what is going on. These are supposed to be statutory bodies, but instead they've become they are supposed to work in the interest of citizens, but instead they've become partisan. They work in the interest of Museveni. So, for example, the Computer Misuse Act. This is a law again it was a nuisance law, and whose scope was not very clear. So anything you said could easily be interpreted to mean that you've abused somebody or you've. I mean, it was very arbitrary, and we know that many people suffered. Luckily, again, thanks to the civil society, this law was challenged and it was struck down by the Constitutional Court. But again, the environment is very challenging. So again, we call upon the development partners not to ignore. Really, they must call out the regime and call out all these different instruments like the media center, the UCC that are supposed to protect the rights of journalists and bloggers and citizens. But to the contrary, they're actually hunting them down. Yes, we're really coming to the final part, which will have two more questions, and then we invite the audience to call in. You have our number; it's pinned out. It's on the flyers. Please call in and ask or give us your submissions or give us your ask questions. Yeah. Finally, how do the challenges faced by Ugandans reflect the broader global trends in press freedom? And what lessons can other lessons learn from Uganda's situation regarding the protection of press freedom and democracy? Rebecca, what is your say?
Thank you, Joe, for the question. Well, how do the challenges faced by Uganda reflect the broader global trends in press freedom? I think with this question, it depends on the part of the globe where you're coming from, because from the development partners or the developed countries or the Western world, journalists are protected in their execution of work, and there is also freedom of expression. People have access to information. But then in countries where the dictators still exist, suppression continuously goes ahead. But what lesson can we get from the suppression of the media or social media and the abduction of bloggers in Uganda? I guess we see how powerful social media is in giving out information, in the true distribution of information. It's really a very big element in transmission of information. And to all the journalists out there, they need to also continuously embark on social media and also be brave enough to continuously give the information out there. Because much as we see it in Uganda, the government tries to curb all means. They put VPN for the Facebook access. They went ahead to impose a tax on social media, but still people can still maneuver in different ways to have access to social media and transmit information there. So the journalists, especially from the developed countries, they need to condemn the practices that are being done in the suppression of the media or journalists, but also engage these these journalists in the who are victims of these atrocities from the dictators, to engage them further to see how they can use these social media platforms. Of course, we can also see that there's more and more censorship on social media. For example, there are several terms that you're not supposed to use, but if at all there is a teamwork, then they can continuously do their work diligently and serve the masses that they are serving.
Thank you, Comrade. I agree with you. That is the only tool of choice that we have for pushing back. There is no other means, and it is very effective if we can think outside the box and we can mobilize. If we can create social movements, really, collaborate or coordinate, we can push back in a very effective way. And I really think we've done a very good job so far. I mean, just look at the mobilization tours that our president has been running. That has been our insurance. That has been our defense. Without that, I think many bad things could have happened. And granted, still things happen, but I think like now they know they are being watched. So there's a level of restraint. I think we saw the last time, even when our police officer had to hide his name tag, because we know that, this regime, the way it uses, our officers, they're given orders, but when it comes to the crunch, they're left to dry. I mean, they're on their own. It becomes a personal responsibility. So I think let's continue to, I think we help with more penetration of social media. The more people have access to smartphones, particularly in the villages, I think the better. We've seen that violations of human rights were taking place in the north, in Karamoja, but because of a lack of that access to, right instruments, a lot of information went, yeah, lots of things happened, and they were not reported about. So, yeah, Comrade Robert, what is your take on that same question?
I think, with the crampdown on the freedom of space, it has led to people being creative, and of course, thank God the internet came at a good time. Otherwise, whatever we're doing, we're saying, wouldn't be possible. So, but I think let's be. But probably the question would have been differently. What can we learn from the outside world in terms of whatever is going on? There's no good case or case study from anyone can learn of our current scenario. So I would think that we have, because if you look at the dictatorial regimes across Africa, it's the same phenomenon going on. Look at Zimbabwe. It's the same thing. They don't have any freedom of expression, so there's nothing good you can say that Uganda can present as a role model when it comes to abuse of freedom of spread of the press. So we need to, and of course, there's nothing you can learn from us. So I think what we need to do is to be more creative, as you said, hinted. People being creative. I think they're really good, sophisticated cameras, which some of these, which are out there on the market, and they're very, 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 very efficient, and I think they're doing a good job. If we did the documentary a while ago and they did a good job, I think they should be concerned that they're out we have some really good gadgets out there which are going to do probably a tremendous good job. So we just recommend that our comrades out there, they stick to the word from our leader. The camera is your savior. The camera is your press. Other than that, we're seeing we're seeing a decay and a loss of freedom, press going slipping away from us, and we can't allow this to happen. So we just commend the people out there to do what they're doing good, and hopefully things will turn around.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, as we draw to a close, we invite you to call in with your questions, with your opinions, with your insights about today's topic. What do you think? As I wait, let me remind you about my phone number. The phone number to call is +46 793 102278. It is on the flyers. From the comment section, Mutiaba writes, the media serves an important role in providing investigative reports, debates, discussions, background and analysis, as well as news stories that is in democratic society. And the Mutiaba, you are very right. The press has the role of a watchdog in society to expose bad governance, to expose corruption, to expose human rights violations. So that is our tool that we can very effectively use. Mutiaba again writes, to be effective and authoritarian, media cannot have competition. Exactly. So they want to control the narrative. They want to control content. They want to control information flow. That is why the media is in the hands of the few. The Bujingos, the Kayanjas, name them. And all these are, part and parcel of the system. Yeah. Comrade Mugisha Hafizu writes, remember, we're dealing with a junta. There is no constitution for citizens in Uganda, but a constitution for a few people. That is why laws don't suit them. That is why laws that don't suit them are amended on a daily basis. Exactly. They make laws that serve their agenda. Very right. Yeah. Dropout 100% writes, here are 5 ways social media might end up making authoritarian states stronger. Making it easier to persecute people who support protest movements, exactly, using, for example, the Computer Misuse Act, by acting as an early warning system for public discontent, exactly. So they pick the signals and then crush the public or the people, making government communication more successful. Yeah, exactly. Allowing regimes to gauge public opinion effectively, modding the water. Finally, even if social media doesn't quite do all the above, it can do a great tool to muddy the water of public discourse. And ladies and gentlemen, these are our comrades. Here we see Faustin Masava, who was abducted and is still in incarceration. Here we have Comrade Batoke, Boss Lutalo, but actually also known as Batoke. He was abducted, but he came out some days back. Yes, so this is what is going on, and we continue to fight for the freedom of our comrades, and not just these comrades, but other prisoners of conscience, political prisoners who have been incarcerated purely because they've spoken truth to the power. We have the abducted 18. We are still demanding for the abducted 18. So this is what we are demanding from this regime. Being in opposition is not a crime. Um, Speaking out your mind, it is your right. It is not a crime. So we call out the dictator to free all the political prisoners, to free all prisoners of conscience. Um, Please, as I said, we welcome your calls. You're free to call, but you can also write. Otherwise, as we draw to a close, yeah, maybe we'll just close with a question, something that, of course, has been happening: corruption in Uganda. The U.S. government imposed sanctions on Speaker Among, her husband Magogo, ministers Goreti Kitutu, Agnes Nandutu, um, Lieutenant General Peter Elwero, and others on grounds of corruption and human rights. So I think the sanctions on Elwero were equal, were very whilst they were a little bit out of step with the normal, but it was very welcome. It was a very welcome gesture on the part of the U.S. And we really think there are many more Elwelus that must be sanctioned. Of course, the problem, I mean, as much as this was highlighted as a problem, we say that this problem was not sufficiently addressed in the state of the union. If anything, actually, the dictator just made it very obvious that he has no political will to end corruption. He said, how are we going to work with these people? He's talking of granting them amnesty. But how do you grant them amnesty without even investigating, the crime, the allegations that have been made? I really think this is very disappointing, and we really think that is why the EU must come in and sanction Museveni and his and cohorts, because they absolutely have no political will in ending corruption. But it's not just corruption; it's the human rights abuses. It's the of press freedoms that are being trumped on. So, in ending, what is your take, Comrade Rebecca? Rebecca, are you muted? Check. Are you muted? I don't.
Yeah, I was muted. Sorry
Oh,
about
great.
that.
Thank you. Yeah.
In conclusion, like you've mentioned, that it was a good gesture when the US, the UK came out to sanction these corrupt officials in Uganda and people who have committed atrocities to the Ugandans, and we should continuously demand for that, because you could also see the panic that it has brought to the regime itself. So, in conclusion, if we use that example to the topic today, that let the international bodies, the UN and other Western governments come out, the EU also, and they pass also sanctions onto these individuals. We know, of course, it's plain clear Muhozi and the dad, they've really suppressed a lot to the media, the bloggers, and because much as we've seen the sanctions coming to these other individuals, they have not really touched the big elephants in this whole scandal. So let them put away the hypocrisy. They stand to what they believe in, and they sanction the real elephants in this whole. I will not call it a scandal, but it's a whole crackdown on a system that has been there for ages.
Thank you, Comrade Robert. What is your take on that?
Oh, on the corruption
Or corruption, the human rights, and the fact that the dictator Museveni actually did not address the salient issues, the substantive issues. That is what we expected him really to address during the state of the nation address. Instead, he casually just brushed, aside the very important subject of corruption, because people, his speaker has been sanctioned. He should have, people expected him to address that the way forward. Instead, he has been defending her from Bukeria in State House and recently at Colorado. I mean, what is your take on that?
Let me start on something which probably we didn't touch upon, or we should probably have seen. Um, Going back to the barrier of one UK-based Ugandan, I think if you missed it, I think the incumbent or General Museveni and his group um, had a concerted effort to try to portray NUP as a party which is really a, trying to abuse human rights or the rights of the journalist, the press. Um, which is really, really disturbing because I think they know that they have a bad reputation on abusing freedom of express. And for some reasons, they staged some people after that barrier or during that barrier that they were being um, I think how did they put it, that they were beaten by the new security guards, which is really is not a good sign to put yourself into. So again, this goes back to the way they believe they have lost trust. Their reputation is gone, and now they're trying to damage or paint a bad image of the NOP because they feel that to equalize the state of human rights or press abuse is to pretty much get someone as a perpetrator, which is really, really, really tacky. They should concentrate on trying to get their team in the right line. Is to be to accord the journalists the right they have, irrespective of whether they are on NUP functions or state functions. That is pretty much very simple. It's really written in our constitution. The journalists have their own freedom. Why try to cover up and try to show a bad image of another party, which pretty much is already on the right side of the law? So it was really tacky. But again, that's the regime for you. If you are a dictatorial regime, that's what you're expected to do. And they're going to be doing a lot of these things. So in terms of corruption, I think corruption, you've seen it. They're driving this signature of the people who are compromised within the loot, and they're fidgeting and they're putting out papers which are trying to validate that it was was passed in the right channels, which it wasn't. And for those who are really trying to push that narrative that the service award, as they call it, was passing the right channels. I think for Noob or as a party, it's all about the integrity. He could he could have come out loud that this is something which has been commissioned, and the party would have advised him at the time when it was passed or when it was approached. We're talking about the receiver, that this is what is going on, until before we came up with was it the Twitter campaign. So again, they're fidgeting with a lot of, I mean, you can't fight the truth. if it was dispatched and given out in the wrong channels, it will still be that. So let them stop fidgeting with papers, trying to share stuff on the internet. Wrong is wrong. And from the party side, I think it's all about integrity. Yeah. So he could have taken the money, but at the end of the day, what were you taking it for? What were you being paid for? You pretty much not even past your time. I mean, what was it? What were they? I mean, to be in a position and to receive that award is really pretty. It's really tacky. It doesn't come. It does. It's whether it was given in good faith. It's not really. It doesn't come down as someone who has integrity. Getting an award from incumbent you're fighting. So I think they're still struggling to validate the award. And again, you're surprised that General Museveni he still doesn't get it. He still doesn't call out these people. And one time he says like, okay, he has this IGP looking into the matter. We have the commission, and he's still not getting it. Like wrong is wrong. So I mean, I'm pretty sure Nope is not the one which started this campaign over the signature. They're just on the receiving end. They did their part, calling out the receiver, and that was done. Whatever is going on, I think it is being initiated by the incumbent, the government. Only they're there, and our people have to able to commit to signing that. But it's not. It's something the party has already settled, at least on their part. So again, what do you expect? That's Genome 7 for you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have somebody on Twitter Space who's actually going to ask a question. Mr. Matovu, please go ahead and give us your submission. Please unmute and speak to us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Greetings to all comrades. Let me hope I'm audible enough.
Yeah, audible, comrade. Yes. Robert, do you hear?
Yeah.
Rebecca, do you hear?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Great. Shoot, comrade.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. My name is Matovu. I'm in South Africa. I'm so happy to hear you, comrades. And I thank all the part you play in the struggle. Now, regarding this topic of press freedom, we need to acknowledge that there is no press freedom in Uganda. We know most of the media houses are captured and are in control of the dictator. But as our principal said, he came out with a solution, and he said that we should continue using our accounts in social media and different platforms to push on the communication or information for regarding the struggle and all activities. And most of the citizens of Uganda who are concerned have used that strategy, and I think it's working well. So for me, I could say that in other way of solving the issue of praise, because we cannot do anything. The dictators got guns and got what, so we can control the media houses in Uganda. But I've seen several chapters, for example, this one, New York State, and here in South Africa, got also one. So I could suggest that most of the chapters should be consistent in their activities wherever they are in the whole world, so that we can we should go on and expose the dictator and his atrocities he's committing in the Uganda. With that said, I'll mute my mic and take it back to Mr. Joe. Thank you so much. May God bless you.
Thank you, Comrade Matu. As always, indeed, any effort and every effort really counts. And I really think we've got to keep up the pressure, and we can see the results, the outcomes of our demonstrations, of our social media activism. We can see the sanctions. We can see, the the regime has become pariah. It has been isolated. So let's continue to mobilize, and we just wish more people engaged, because the power of the internet is really, really. We cannot. I think we underestimated. I just wished more people engaged. But so far we are seeing the results, and we let's continue to engage. But even our people back home, I think that will be the weapon of choice. It doesn't necessarily put them in harm's way, but of course they have to be careful what they do and how they engage. But it still remains a very, very powerful tool. Thank you. Anyone else? Sarah, would you like to come in? I see you. Museveni, you've been there. Please, if you have questions, if you have any insights, you're welcome to, to, to air your views. We're really now, we're wrapping up. We shall be closing, but if you have an opinion, please feel free to express it. Yeah. Well, comrades. As we wrap up, I think let me reiterate that this conversation seeks to engage the EU, seeks to engage the EU institutions, in particular the EU Council, the EU Commission, the EU Parliament, but above all the citizenry of the EU. We think this conversation is very, very important because EU is a big player as far as our development and our as far as our development budget is concerned. So we feel it has leverage on the regime. If really they call it out, we really think they will act. And like we said, they cannot claim to uphold, democratic principles and values on the one hand, whilst they are promoting or they're working with the dictator. I think there is a contradiction in terms there, and that needs to be resolved. So they must put preconditions, for them for them to, if they think they must deal with Museveni, let them put preconditions. They cannot just religiously support a dictator who has been in power for 39 years, and I mean 39 uninterrupted years. It is time they really put some demands and call for accountability. So it is very, very important. Comrades, as we wrap up, I would like you now to make your closing remarks. And let's start with Comrade Rebecca Nava. Over to you, Comrade Rebecca. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. I would like to thank you, the EU leader and the committee that organizes this session for giving me an opportunity to be here. And to the EU citizens out there, please put your government to the task of answering these questions. Where does your taxpayers' money go? And if at all it gets there, what does it do? It's high time that you join the struggle to see where your money goes. Otherwise, the atrocities or the blood that is shed every day is also on your hands, because it's from your pockets where you pay taxes, and then your money is being used for such things. And to the comrades out there, let's continuously demand the release of all political prisoners, all social media bloggers, and let's continuously engage the
Apologies. Yes, I was muted. Oh, sorry. Never. The deputy space had muted. I apologize. It was not intentional. Please carry on, Comrade. Now, Rebecca.
Yeah, and let's continuously demand uh, the release of our comrades. Let's continuously engage the partners, our local politicians, the EU Parliament. Uh, let's put it to a task to see that they also get involved in this struggle to oust the dictator from Uganda. Otherwise, thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you, Joe, for hosting.
Thank you, Comrade. Finally, Comrade Robert Kitunzi, your closing remarks, please. Thank you.
Yes, Joe, thanks for today, for today's episode. Nava, thanks for joining us. We needed a female touch on our demonstration. I think people were getting worried. Is it going to be a male-dominated panel? We need to bring in a few ladies on this program. And I really thank and I take home Matovu's comment that we really need to drive this thing. We need there has to be some consistency. We don't have to do it as and when we please. So for us, as I mentioned earlier, with my team, we have devoted ourselves at least to do this every Sunday. We can take at least 1.5 hours, 2 hours every Sunday to advocate for the whereabouts of the 18 abducted Ugandans leading up to the 2021 elections, to advocate for those who are being abducted for political reasons, advocating for the release of our social media activists and and also to ask the incumbent of General Museveni to stop this carnage of abducting journalists or press personnel. They really need to do their job. We should have a functioning society. The society needs to get the right data to make right decisions about how the society functions. So they really need that information. So they need to stop on clamping down on the information flow within the country. Yes, we also would like to mention a few activities coming up. As I said, we intend to do this on a weekly basis. We've also devoted ourselves to do a demonstration, one demonstration every month at the end of the month. This is not different in all different chapter areas in the region, in the EU. We intend to demonstrate at the end of this month. So I call upon all European citizens of Ugandan background to support your respective chapter. Go out there, demand for the release or the whereabouts of the 18 abducted people. I've seen someone we've missed to mention about. Mombia was abducted around the same time as Masava. He works, I think, with the team with the NUP security team. We also send our sincere condolences to one of our security guard, Kabogo, who passed away mysteriously. Brief story about Kabogo. He was abducted. Was arrested. He was incarcerated. He was imprisoned, and then he's a very young, very energetic guy. God knows what went down when he was incarcerated, and mysteriously he passed away. So we send our condolences to his families. And may his soul rest in peace, and it will never be forgotten. Bobby Young. This is the second time they are arresting him. They've abducted him before. Now he's still in detention. We do really advocate for his release. If they can't convict him, so And then, yes, last but not least, we this is something which probably has nothing to do with this. Maybe I shouldn't say it here because it has nothing to do with the NUP. I'll have to do it in another space. I think that's pretty much it. So for those who have been listening to us, follow our channel. We'll be doing with you every Sunday, probably around the same time, 1 Swedish time, which is 4 or 3 Ugandan time. So thanks again for listening, and I wish you a pleasant Sunday and an upcoming week. Over to you, Joe.
Thank you very much, comrades Rebecca and comrade Robert. Yes, as we draw to a close, let me remind our listeners that this conversation really is aimed, targets the EU, in particular the EU institutions, the EU Council, the EU Commission, the EU Parliament, but above all, the EU citizenry. As an important partner, we feel we must engage because it plays a very important role in our development strategy. Yeah, press freedom, and of course we're here to highlight all the issues. We're here to highlight all the issues that are affecting our country. And we've been doing, a human rights violation series, and this is episode 4. Today, however, we wanted to speak about press freedoms. Press freedoms continue to play a very important role because they are pillars of democracy and human rights. And in the context of Uganda, the terrain is not very encouraging. There is an upsurge in the clampdown on social media activists, on journalists, on bloggers, on netizens, and this must stop. So we really call upon the EU embassies. I mean, whether the Swedish embassy, Danish embassy, Italian, Dutch embassies, to bring pressure to bear on dictator Museveni to release our comrades, to release Masala, to release Mumbia, to release PTA, to release BobiWine, and many others. We have the abducted 18 who are missing. These are prisoners of political these are prisoners of political conscience. They've not done anything wrong other than subscribing to their political parties, which is their right. So we demand that they be released or they be produced. So this is because press freedoms are very important. They are guaranteed by our constitution, Article 29, but they're also guaranteed by the African Charter on Human and People Rights. They're also guaranteed by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So Sweden, the EU, which is a signatory to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, must live by its principles and its values and call out Museveni. It is time Museveni and his cohorts were sanctioned, especially by the EU. The UK has done it. The US has done it. What is the EU waiting for? How many more people must get killed? How many more people must get arrested, abducted, tortured before the EU realizes that Museveni must be sanctioned? I think the time is now, and we are not going to relent until this is done. So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, I thank you for participating. All our listeners, all those who wrote in the comment section, and others you have listened in from the different time zones. We look forward to hosting you again next Sunday on the same channel. That is the Uganda Diaspora EU Broadcasting Service. We ask you to subscribe to our channel. We ask you to follow us on Twitter we ask you to follow us on Facebook. Yes, thank you very much, and we look forward to hosting you once again. Panelists, thank you very much for participating, and thank you for your very positive insights, and we look forward to hosting you again. Yeah, so we wish you a nice weekend, and we sign out. Bye for now. Thank you. Robert, you sign out.
Sign
End
off.
the live. It's good to end the live.